Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date, Wednesday, December 23rd, 2015. Oh yes, it's gonna last 2 days for last 2 days for shopping. So people doing their rushing, running around, maxing out their credit cards, and getting anything that's pretty useless at times. I'm just having fun talking about it. However, I always tell folks, I always boldly endorse give 'em something that's knowledgeable, useful, and they can ascertain it for a long period of time and hand it out to their loved ones, etc. That would be your best recommendation of you shopping for gifts. And a person like myself, I don't have high expectations on these days. I'm not a big fan of gifts and so forth, but I appreciate some of the stuff. I will say that, but I'm not into the whole materialistic consumerism. So always do it wisely. And of course, today is the 102nd anniversary of the criminal banking system, which is known as the Federal Reserve, which the Federal Reserve Act got passed and signed by Woodrow Wilson, which he openly admits that was the biggest mistake he made. So think about the economy, what's going on. Don't blame the Democrats. Don't blame the Republicans. That's immaterialistic distraction. But focused on them. But remember, 1933, around that time in history, the United States was declared bankrupt according with President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Then a couple of years later, they did pass the Social Security Act as receivership. Something to think about, my friends. So definitely look that up when you have a chance. So speaking of the Federal Reserve, I want to do multiple things, some firearm related stuff and um, TSA resistance in one state in New Hampshire, and gun sales. So what the hell? Talk about firearms today, and a cool little poet from a friend of mine, comrade. It was cool, good folk, good man, honorable person. But that would be like the last thing on the segment. So it's from the International Business Times. Came out today. Election 2016. Bernie Sanders calls for restructuring Federal Reserve. What? Why is that restructuring? But before I make a judgment call, let's just read this along. This is by Abigail Abrams. And it says here, Democratic presidential candidate Senator Bernie Sanders called for a major restructuring of the Federal Reserve in an op-ed piece published Wednesday in the New York Times. The piece argues that the Federal Reserve, which oversees financial institutions and uses monetary policy to maintain employment and price stability, is too beholden to big banks rather than everyday people. Okay. Unfortunately, an institution that was created to serve all Americans has been hijacked by the very bankers it regulates, Sanders wrote in the op-ed. In the piece, he calls for the Government Accountability Office to conduct a full independent audit of the Federal Reserve each year and lays out a plan that he would require to use the U.S. Central Bank to help regular Americans in addition to corporate bankers. Can you explain why you support the watered down version of the Federal Audit the Federal Reserve Bill, which Congressman Paul authored there, Senator? Think about that. Banking industry reform has been long been a top priority for Sanders, and many have said his progressive views on this and other issues have pushed Hillary Clinton, his primary opponent for the Democratic nomination, to the left. In his role as a U.S. Senator from Vermont, Sanders has introduced legislation multiple times that would break up the nation's biggest banks, which he sees as exerting too much influence and dangerous for the economy. 7 years ago, the Federal Reserve and the Treasury Department bailed out the largest financial institutions in this country because they were considered too big to fail. But almost everyone is bigger today than it was before the bailout. The New York Times piece said, if any were to fail again, taxpayers could be on the hook for another bailout, perhaps a larger one this time. Sanders' push for banking reform shows that he believes even 7 years after the country's economy collapsed in 2008, liberals are still angry about big banks receiving bailouts. Yeah. Can you explain why President Obama signed the second one? Or actually, yeah, the second bailout. I don't know if it's, but I will continue on here. I'm just babbling at the moment. And he may be right. Polls consistently show that Democrats place a higher priority on the economy and jobs when voting than any other topic. A Quinnipiac University poll out Tuesday showed 34% of Democrats said the economy and jobs were the issues that mattered most to them when deciding whom to support for president, more than any other issue by 20%, over 20%. In his piece, the New York Times Sanders criticized the Fed for its recent interest hike, rate hike when he said it would hurt American workers who need more jobs and higher wages. He also lambasted the U.S. Central Bank for allowing members of banks to serve on his boards. A practice he said would be akin to allow the head of oil and gas giant ExxonMobil to run the Environmental Protection Agency. If I were elected president, the foxes and no longer guard the henhouse. To ensure the safety and soundness of our banking system, we need to fundamentally restructure the Fed's governance system to eliminate conflicts of interest, Sanders said in the piece. Board members should be nominated by the president and chosen by the Senate. Okay, that's fair enough. Banking industry executives must longer be allowed to serve on Fed boards and to handpick its members and staff. Board positions should instead include representatives from all walks of life, including labor, consumers, homeowners, urban residents, farmers, and small businesses. Sanders laid out a plan for how he would require financial institutions to invest in the economy and provide loans to small businesses and consumers. He called for the Fed to charge banks a fee that he would provide direct loans to small businesses and said he would require large banks to commit to increase lending to credit-worthy small businesses and consumers in exchange for support from the central bank. Finally, the Vermont senator reiterated his position that he wanted to reinstate the Glass-Steagall banking law, which required commercial banks to split their investment banking operations. The law was repealed in 1999 and has been rallying cry for progressives like Sanders and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. It's time to make banking work for the productive economy and for all Americans, not just a handful of wealthy speculators. Sanders said it begins by making the Federal Reserve a more democratic institution, and that is a response to the needs of ordinary Americans rather than the billionaires on Wall Street. It sounds all lovey-dovey. Doesn't mean he's always completely wrong. I am very critical of him and for not following through with the audit in the Federal Reserve, which Congressman Paul wrote. Very disappointed in him in that. Plus, the Federal Reserve is actually unconstitutional under Article 1, Section 8 of our U.S. Constitution, which states that the Congress, I think it's Clause 6, I believe. I got to look it up. Talks about Congress can regulate money, okay, which the Congress should do it, not some central bank. And plus, our money has to be money under gold and silver coins. Okay, that's under Section 10 of Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution. I'm going to add that to these footnotes. And if Sanders is really tough on this, he should follow through on Executive Order 11,110, which John F. President Kennedy signed to make it to a silver certificate instead of a Federal Reserve note. So I'm going to add some of those footnotes, and I'm going to add the one too about when Ron Paul was disappointed in him on his thing on the Fed. And I'll be right back in a moment. Oh, sorry about that. It was an important call, but I'm back. So I'm going to add those footnotes, what I talk about, and it'll be like just to give you guys a more of an enlightening input on here. That's why people talk about how great Bernie Sanders is, and I say in good faith, you got to do your homework on on this man and all the other candidates that are running for president. He is not, respectfully, he is not Bill of a friend to our Bill of Rights culture. He's just an example of who's running for president. Well, that doesn't mean I'm going to go and crucify him for everything. If he's right, I'm going to support him. Because I remember the last episode, when I talked about the omnibus bill, $1.1 trillion bill. Senator Paul voted no, and so did Bernie Sanders. So I will thank him for that. But it doesn't mean we're going to be friends. See, these politicians aren't my friends; they're my servants. And this is why you've got to stay vigilant. Do your homework. That would be your best remedy. And that's all I have to say about this restructuring of the Federal Reserve for Bernie Sanders. Hey, agree or not, send me your. Let's have a cool chat. Don't be shy. All right, next one here came from Important News. Speaking of the banks, this is by Michael Snyder, a good man. Okay, good man. He has his great website. We follow each other on Twitter, and we're pen pals on Facebook. It says here, J.P. Morgan and Citigroup agree that the U.S. economy is steamrolling toward a recession. It's December 6th. Wow, it's a while back. What the heck? We'll read it anyway. As we approach the end of 2015, researchers at both J.P. Morgan and Citigroup agreed to the probability that the U.S. economy will soon plunge into a recession is rising. Just last week, a member of the U.S. House of Representatives asked Janet Yellen about Citigroup's assessment that there is a 65% chance that the United States will experience an economic recession in 2016. You can read her answer below. Just a few days ago, J.P. Morgan economists Michael Feroli, Daniel Silver, Jesse Edgerton, and Robert Melman released a report in which they declare that the probability of the recession within 3 years has risen to an eye-catching 76%. Our longer-run indicators, however, continue to suggest an elevated risk that the expansion is nearing its end, and our preferred model now puts the probability of recession within 3 years at an eye-catching 76%. The good news is that the economists at J.P. Morgan believe that a recession will probably not hit us within the next 6 months, but due to steadily weakening economic conditions, they are convinced that this is the most certain to strike within the next 5 years. When we first wrote, only manufacturing sentiment was signaling an above-average probability of imminent recession, they said, but recent weakening in the Richmond Fed Reserve survey and the ISM non-manufacturing index have now pushed the non-manufacturing sentiment probability up somewhat as well. In the short term, the note said that the 6-month likelihood is 5%, but within in a year, it stands at 23%, in 2 years, 48%, and in 3 years, the eye-popping 76%. To be honest, I believe that the assessment is far too optimistic, and it appears that the researchers at Citigroup agree with me. According to them, that there is a 65% chance that the U.S. economy will plunge into a recession by the end of next year. Last week, Janet Yellen was asked during his testimony before Congress, Joint Economic Committee, Yellen was asked by Representative Pat Tiberi about a piece of research released by Citigroup's rates strategy team Monday. Specifically, Tiberi and how a Republican want to know what Yellen may be Citi's conclusion that there is a 65% chance of recession in 2016. The economist said that they would assign about a 65% likelihood of recession in the United States in 2016. Now, 65% sounds high to me, but I'm not an economist. I am not the federal chair, but zero risk might be too low as well. So what would you assign a risk level of a recession next year? Tiberi asked. So how did Yellen respond? Her answer was about what you would expect. I was absolutely wouldn't see it as anything approaching 65%, the central banker said. This reminds me so much of what former Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke said when he asked a similar question back in 2008. The Federal Reserve is not currently forecasting recession. Later on, when the official members finally came out and all the revisions were done, we learned that the U.S. economy was already in a recession when he made that statement. And when it was said and done this time around, I believe that history will show that a new global recession had already started when Janet Yellen made her statement. But I don't like to take my word for it. Don't take my word for it. The British banking giant HSBC is the largest bank in the Western world, and they recently announced that the global economy has already entered a dollar recession, according to the HSBC. Total global trade has fallen 8.4% so far this year, and global GDP expressed in U.S. dollars is down 3.4%. If their figures are correct, a new global recession has definitely begun. And without a doubt, we've already seen a tremendous amount of global financial turmoil. This is something I highlighted in my recent article entitled 27 Major Global Stock Markets That Have Already Crashed by the Double-Digit Percentages in 2015. When Zero Hedge republished my article, several excellent charts were added that really illustrated how many bad things have gotten, and I wanted to share a couple of them with you. Of 93 largest stock market indexes in the world, an astounding 47 of them, more than half, are down at least 10% year to date. This first chart shows which one falls in that category. And there's a big list of that. The chart you can see for yourself. On the primary equity indices, of course, Ukrainian index is down 55%. So it's a lot of stuff is happening. There's a lot of negatives here. So on these stock markets, it's around the world, by the way. Here's another chart that was added by Zero Hedge, shows how decoupled U.S. stocks have become global stocks overall. As you can see, U.S. stocks are to fall from recent highs at the moment, but global stocks overall are solidly in bear market territory, and it shows the chart on there on the Q and the QE3. Since mid-2015, trillions of dollars stock market's wealth have been wiped out globally. Let that sink in for a moment. The debate is over. The major financial collapse that so many warned was imminent has actually happened. It's just that U.S. stocks have not gotten the memo yet. Up to this point, they have defied gravity, but at some point, U.S. stocks and the world stocks will converge once again. And if you want to see many of the reasons why U.S. stocks will soon take a big tumble, just check out this article. There's a link for that. There's no way that U.S. stocks will be able to defy the underlying economic fundamentals that are plummeting another global market for much longer. Just like in 2008, a global stock market slide that starts elsewhere will eventually hit the United States. It's just a matter of time. But once again, even though the U.S. stocks are doing okay for a moment, that doesn't negate the fact that more than half of all major global stock indexes are down by double-digit percentage year to date. We have not seen the numbers like this since the great stock market crash of 2008, and it seems abundantly clear to me that the great financial shaking that so many warned was coming in 2015 is already happening. And if the J.P. Morgan and Citigroup are correct, what we have seen so far is just a preview of something very troubling time ahead. So, yes, definitely look at these too, because, like, good example, the Brazil above spot index was at 45,360.76 level, and it's a drop from almost 36%. And here too, the Ukrainian equity index, okay, their level is at 6.96.68, and that's a negative 55%. It's a 55% drop. So it's all mainly in sequential order, and that's why you have to always examine these things in a bigger picture, and that's where it got the great domino effect. It happened before World War II with the German economy. In a period of time, it just went around, just hit a brick wall, man, domino effect. So that's why I always tell folks, even including myself, Got to get on the ball. Prepare yourselves at the best of your ability. Have sound money. Be self-contained. Learn from one another. There's some fantastic programs out there, like Woofing is incredible. They teach people how to farm. Like you can go there, if you have your skills, you can be on their land, and you just work with them, or work on animals or anything they need. It's like a little community, which I find it really unique. And this is why people may talk smack about the Amish, but when it comes to when it comes to being off the grid, they're very good. And even the Mormons, when it comes to preparing, the traditional Mormons, they know they have food for a year stocked, ready to go. So it's good to learn from these individuals and have the knowledge to to better yourself and your loved ones. That's why I'm always gotta be vigilant. We all gotta be honorably vigilant. So hopefully, if it's the case, prepare yourselves at all costs. Don't cut your wrists. Don't blame the Democrats. Don't blame the Republicans. Don't blame capitalism. That's not going to solve anything. Being productive is a solution. So I'm going to end it with that. End it with that segment. And we're going to go over here, which I find pretty intriguing. This is from slashgear.com. Actually, I got a lot of these links from Freedom Phoenix, which is pretty cool. And that's a good site, by the way, freedomphoenix.com. They do a lot of links. They have a podcast. He has some good stuff. You'll definitely check them out. But it's here from slashgear.com. And it came out yesterday. And it says here, now the TSA can force you to go through the body scanner by Chris Davies. Your next flight may be a mandatory trip through the body scanner, with the U.S. government quietly changing its opt-out rules for searches. In a document published earlier this month, the Department of Homeland Security outlined an update to the advanced imagery technology protocols used by the TSA at U.S. airports, adding the clause which follows officers to insist travelers go through the controversial machines. Previously, the body scanners were present at many airports across the country. Travelers were free to opt out of the process. Billed as a privacy consideration, it meant a physical screening was mandatory, but alleviated concerns held by some that the technology could seem them naked and store photographs of that. Now, through that option is being diluted, though not completely retired, the TSA is updating the AITPIA to reflect a change to the operating protocol regarding the ability of individuals to opt out of the AIT screening in favor of physical screening, the DHS writes. While passengers may generally decline the AIT screening in favor of physical screening, the TSA made direct mandatory AIT screening for some passengers. No more detailed explanation for the changes given. However, it seems like the scanner's ability to single out metallic objects hidden around the body, and that might seem to be missed by a physical search from a TSA agent. It's seen as invaluable for whoever security services believe presents a greater than normal risk. The document also points out the scanner did not store or transmit of any graphic capture while travelers are using them. Instead, such images are only shown on the nearby display until TSA agents can physically check the specific area. Meanwhile, unlike earlier, which did indeed show nudity, the newer system replaces individual images with that generic figure, the DHS writes. All the same, is likely to change the policy could cause a few headaches at airports should travelers want to opt out. Be informed that the only way they can get to their gate is to submit to body scanning. Another disturbing entity that believes that government knows best. And this is why a person like myself, I fly when I want. I know what to do. And it's going to hurt business. We're going to have a bailout for the airline industry now because you got some federal bureaucrats trying to tell us They think they're better than us. And here's the one thing I always it really talks about here. Like they forget, it's dangerous to your health. It's been discussed for a long time, and plus you can look at the John Hopkins University and Columbia University on these body scanners. Because I remember too that Broward County commissioners try to ban these things, and it never really went through. And here's the thing, my friends, at the airports, it's under municipality property, county property. So right there, they're encroaching again on the 10th Amendment obligation. Read Federalist Papers 46, encroachment, or Prince versus United States, the whole Brady Act thing, encroachment. So that's another thing. Another thing that'll give you a headache, but they haven't put out the details yet. Why? Because they know they will piss people off during the winter season. So they want to probably do this after. So definitely be prepared. Hopefully, when these things come out, there's other ways of getting rid of the TSA. I say let's get rid of these people, get rid of their program, and we can have the counties decide who they can hire that are more qualified to do these things. So I'm gonna leave it at that. And there's some good news here. This is by 10th Amendment Center.com. This one's entitled New Hampshire Bill Would Ban NSA Activity Called the Biggest Threat Since the Civil War. It's by Michael Maharrey. It's a blog, by the way. It says here, a bill introduced in the New Hampshire House for the 2016 session will prohibit federal-local surveillance collaboration that the NSA's former chief technical director called the biggest threat since the Civil War. Representative Neil Kirk pre-filed House Bill 1494. The legislation would prohibit government agencies from acquiring, collecting, retaining, or using personal information and social media data without a warrant in most cases. The bill does not allow exceptions to the warrant requirement. Governments can collect personal information with the express written permission of the owner, pursuant to judicially recognized exception to the warrant requirement or in some emergency situations. HB 1494 broadly defines personal information. A person's name, date, or place of birth, social security number, address, employment history, credit history, financial information, account numbers, cellular telephone, voice over internet protocol, or landline telephone numbers, biometric identifiers, including fingerprints, facial photographs, or images, retinal scans, DNA, RNA, or other identifying data unique to that individual, or one or more pieces of information that, when considered together or in the context of the information that is presented or gathered, are sufficient to specify a unique individual. HB 1494 includes criminal penalties. In other words, law enforcement agents collecting information in violation of the law will be subject to arrest. The legislation does contain a qualification that seems rather broad. It allows information collection if required by a government pursuant to state or federal law that provided such information that, let me see here, sorry about that. Information is requested and does supplied by information and service provider for named individuals only, or in the case of employees and or contractors of an information and service provider for all of its employees and or contractors. It remains unclear exactly how much latitude this will give law enforcement agencies to gather data on individuals without a warrant. Even with this loophole, HB 1494 will still bar state and local law enforcement agencies in New Hampshire acquiring any information data gathered through mass surveillance, including holding information shared by a federal agency. Effect on data sharing. Even though the bill does not directly address data gathering by federal agencies, prohibiting state and local law enforcement from obtaining data gathering through the mass surveillance would effectively end a practical effect of NSA spying. NSA collects, stores, and analyzes data on countless millions of people without a warrant, without even the mere suspicion of criminal activity. The NSA also tracks the physical location of people through their cell phones. In late 2013, the Washington Post reported that NSA is gathering nearly 5 billion records a day on the whereabouts of cell phones around the world. This includes data of tens of millions of Americans each year without a warrant through fusion centers. State and local law enforcement act as an information recipients from various federal departments under the Information Sharing Environment (ISE). ISE partners include Office of Director of National Intelligence, which is an umbrella covering 17 federal agencies and organizations, including the NSA. State and local law enforcement share data up the chain with the feds. The NSA expressly shares warrantless data with the state and local law enforcement through the super secret DEA unit known as the Special Operations Division, or SOD. The information is being used for criminal prosecutions. A Reuters report last fall showed that most of this shared data has absolutely nothing to do with national security issues. Most of it involves routine criminal investigations. This data sharing shoves a dagger into the heart of the Fourth Amendment. In an interview last fall, former NSA Technical Chief William Binney called the NSA sharing the most threatening situation of our constitutional republic since the Civil War. That was information. When you allow this kind of assembly of information, there is so much power that, like J. Edgar Hoover on super steroids, he said, this is not compatible with any form of democracy at all. Passage of HB 1494 into law will prohibit from this happening in New Hampshire. So there's ways of doing it. If you live in that state, you can contact them. So I say yes, this is great. It may have some flaws, which is okay according to this article, but you can make it better. Because the whole thing is this, my friends, even in their own state constitution, the right to privacy is intimate. It's righteous. So I'm happy this is coming out, and this is why, like I tell folks, federal law can never supersede the state's rights. They can do any unconstitutional law all they want. The states can still say they can still tell them to stick it. And of course, it has happened when the federal government make these little threats, what they did in Texas with the pat downs and so forth, a groping with the TSA. So we know all this, but that's just a fear factor. When you stick to your guns, you can make a difference. So anyone that lives in New Hampshire definitely support this bill. And I think everyone within the states of the union should relay this to your elected servants as well. So this is definitely a good thing, and this is why it can be done. So when you hear people say, "Oh, you can't do anything about it," you know why? They're the ones that are whiny and they bend over for the system because that's all they can do, and don't even associate with them until they repent. And that's it in that area. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, next one here is from Truth in Media. There'll be a couple from Truth in Media. Yeah, this one here came out yesterday. And it says here, Ron Paul introduces bill to block Obama from executive action on gun control. It's by Rachel Blevins. It says here, GOP presidential candidate Senator Rand Paul reintroduced a bill on money that would prevent funding for any executive order from President Obama that would act gun control measures. The separation of powers, restoration, and Second Amendment Preservation Act, which is currently being fast-tracked through the Senate. As you can see at a vote as early as next month, is an update. The version of the bill was introduced in 2013 to 2014. The bill states that existing or proposed executive action that infringes on the powers and duties of Congress under Section 8 of Article 1 of the Constitution of the United States of the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States shall have no force or effect. It is sense of Congress that any executive action issued by the President before, on, or after the date of enactment of this act that infringes on the powers and duties of Congress under Section 8 of Article 1 of the United States Constitution. Oops, sorry about that. Or the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution of the United States, or that would require expenditure of federal funds not specifically appropriate for the Purpose of the executive action is advisory only, has no force or effect unless enacted as law. The bill would also give Americans the right to launch a civil lawsuit if they were affected by executive action on gun control. In the United States, we don't have a king, but we do have a constitution, Paul said in the statement. We also have the Second Amendment, and I will fight tooth and nail to protect it. In October, reports Obama claimed that Obama was considering using an executive order to circumvent Congress in order to mandate that anyone who sells more than 50 guns a year has has to have a federal license, and any potential customers must have federal background checks. Well, you know what? I gotta give that man the thumbs up because at least Senator Paul is doing something about it. I have my disappointments, but this one here is fantastic. And even too, what you can do is look up Title 42 U.S. Code, Section 1983, that the people can write to be compensated for violating their constitutional rights. So I will definitely add that to the memo as well. So you guys can really look at it. So we already got it in the books. He's just enhancing it. And you know what? I like this idea. I think it's incredible. And you got to give Rand Paul credit on this. At least he's doing things. And like I said before, I will criticize him on some of his actions. But this one here, I will give him the thumbs up. And that's one thing I like. When you do something correctly, I'm going to support it. If you do something incorrectly, I'm going to criticize you. Plain and simple. This is how it goes. So definitely get involved, push for this bill, and what you can and make sure it can be done. All right, because right now those yahoos, the tyrants, and people of Washington D.C. believe that they know better than you on how you should live under natural law. Which, hey, what's up? All right, under natural law. So this is you gotta really pursue this, push for it, and make it get those phones off the hook. Bill of Rights culture. Remember, Bill of Rights stands for government keep out. All right, I'll be doing a little breather for a moment, and I'll be right back. So don't be shy. Okay, I'm back. Just do a little touch ups here. So another little breather, which is all well and good. Yes, and next one we're going to be here another thing on Truth Media, which came out yesterday again. This is Texas Attorney General. Public colleges cannot ban licensed carriers from keeping guns in dorms. This is by Barry Dongan. In response to a letter asking for clarification on state gun laws sent by State Senator Brian Birdwell, Republican from Granbury, Texas Republican Attorney General Ken Paxton issued an advisory opinion on Monday stating that Texas public colleges and universities are prohibited from banning the possession of guns in dorms by concealed handgun carry license holders. Senator Birdwell's letter, dated November 18th, read, "It's been reported in the public media that some public colleges are considering prohibiting the possession of public handguns in some or all dormitories and or other college-owned or leased residential housing. This would appear to violate the express language of recently enacted Campus Carry Law Senate bill that limits regulatory authority to those pertaining to storage of handgun in such locations." Courthouse News Service notes that Senator Birdwell asked Attorney General Paxton to clarify that what authority Texas public colleges have to regulate the firearms in individual classrooms and dormitories, whether individual classrooms and dormitories, whether individual professors can ban guns from their classrooms, and what remedies an individual whose rights have been violated by a college can pursue. If a public institution of higher education places a prohibition on handguns in institution, campus, residential facilities, that would effectively prohibit license owners and those facilities from carrying concealed handguns on campus in violation of the express terms of Senate Bill 11, wrote Paxton in his advisory report. In his advisory opinion, he added, a court would likely conclude that a public institution of higher education exceeds the authority granted under Senate Bill 11 if it prohibits the carrying concealed handguns in a substantial number of classrooms or delegates to individual professors the decisions as to whether possession of a concealed handgun is allowed in the individual professor's classroom. Paxton's opinion argued that people whose gun rights have been violated at an institution of higher learning are not allowed to sue for damages due to sovereign immunity, but they can sue the force to the university to comply with Senate Bill 11. Paxton said only that a president or chief executive order of a college or university has been given authority under Senate Bill 11 to ban guns from a particular classroom. He also said that the law allows an institution to establish reasonable requirements related to a location and manner in which handguns are stored within its residential facilities on campus. What is reasonable, if any given circumstance, will involve the questions of fact. Well. So they only have some conditions, but thereafter you can't do it in the whole entire university or dormitory. It's interesting because some people are protesting on guns, like we gotta keep our colleges gun free, let the authorities take care of it, and they never learned on the sovereign immunity liability tort. And the state of Texas has that as well, that you cannot sue public employees for liability for them not giving you assistance, like the police. Always believe in pro self-defense. Period. The people who own firearms have to have a higher standard. Absolutely. Training. They take the initiative on learning these particular tools. It can be harmful when it's done improperly. It can save lives when it's necessary. That's why these anti-firearm, anti-self-defense nuts don't like it. They want to rant and rave and make the point across and give you a big story what happened to them. Hey, there's people I know who got shot too, who got their lives taken using firearms. Doesn't mean I want it banned. It doesn't work. But responsibility is essential. Learning these things, not flaunting it. So that's one of the reasons why. But I will give them credit. But I'll tell you one thing: any criminals who try to go in these particular schools in Texas, don't think twice. Because one thing people gotta learn: firearm free zones don't fight crime. That is a fact. And if you folks heard my episodes in the past, you understand where I'm coming from and everything I address to the best of my ability. My ability, I'm tongue-tied there, sorry, has merit. But you got to make a decision for yourselves. Like I'll say it again, and probably in the future, when you folks carry or own a firearm, you have higher responsibilities at the higher level. That's what I got to say. Safety, firearm safety is everyone's responsibility, including everything else, tools and equipment. But I will give Ken Paxton a thumbs up on this. Real proud of him. This is from today. I just gotta laugh. I'm not a big fan of today's news. This show today, I don't even watch it, but this was a pretty cool eye opener. I got this on Twitter. Like Freedom Phoenix again. Thank you for putting this out on Twitter. It says here, see why gun sales are surging just in time for Christmas. This is by Scott Stump. In the converge of fears over terrorism, a perceived threat of gun laws being charged in the Christmas holidays has sent gun sales soaring, which is already the busiest month of the year for firearm purchases. Guns are at the top of the many Christmas lists, especially if November is any indication. Last month, the FBI ran more than 2.2 million firearm background checks on potential buyers, a 24% increase from November 2014. On Black Friday, a record 185,345 background checks were processed by the FBI. That increase coincided with the coordinated terrorist attacks at multiple sites in Paris by ISIS gunmen on November 13th that killed 130 people and wounded 368. Weeks later, on December 2nd, an attack on holiday parties in San Bernardino, California, killed 14 and injured 11 others. It marked the 355th mass shooting in 336 days this year, and the deadliest since Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in Connecticut 3 years ago. Well, I'm gonna stop for a moment. You can look at this up yourselves. FBI.gov, Table 8, under Connecticut. Zero murders happened in Newton, Connecticut. So how they want to use Sandy Hook shooting as an indicate. And this is 356 mass shootings. So I'm seeing a fear factor here, my friends. So this is why that's why I'm glad I bring this propaganda and give you guys the truth. It's more of a fear thing in that area. However, I will continue on. At places like Avengers Outdoors and some Samara, Georgia, business has nearly doubled compared to a year ago at this time, according to manager Eric Wallace. Ever since the Paris attack, we've seen had a lot of customers coming in. Wallace told Gabe Gutierrez on Tuesday, buying guns to protect their homes, their families, and themselves. Like any good husband, I asked for the list of Christmas items that you'd like to have on one of those items with a firearm. A gun owner, Louis Cole, told Gutierrez. Above jewelry was a firearm. Well, you know what was funny about that? Like everyone's jumping it pretty quick. Hey, I told people this. Was like, what do you want for Christmas? Hey, give me some firearms and ammunition on my birthday or Christmas. It's after September 11th. Let's give you a very good example of how far I went. 14 years now, everyone's talking about it, which I find it pretty amazing. All right, continue on here. Giving a gun as a gift to another person within your own state is allowed under federal law. Oh, really? What law is that? ATF laws, right? Good grief. And in many states, the recipient is not required to get a background check. The exchange has to be a gift. So so-called straw purchases are illegal, meaning the recipient cannot pay the person back for buying him or her a gun. Sales of gun accessories has also piked as firearm retailers have seen the biggest demand since President Obama's re-election in 2012. President Obama, the greatest firearm endorser in American history. More companies have also tailored their approach to attract more women. Companies like the Well-Armed Woman in Scottsdale, Arizona have done brisk business selling accessories like holsters, concealed carries, and bullet jewelry targeting female gun owners. A shooting range in Las Vegas, the gun store offers bachelorette parties where guests shoot pink AK-47s. It's significant to give the gift of love to arm the people that you love with the tools and the training to protect themselves. Royal Armed Woman owner Carrie Lightfoot said on Today. Yeah, I like that. And I think I find it pretty cool. I like it a lot. And the whole thing is, like I said, like people at first, I chat with people at first, and they're not really are really leery about firearms ownership. Now they want to learn to shoot. They're owning because I inspired them. It's not out of being macho or arrogance. It's out of love and good faith, and give them the knowledge. If they make a mistake and no one got hurt, I let them know this is what you don't do. I'm not a firearms instructor, but when it comes to safety and responsibility, I do my best. But I always recommend them go to a firearms instructor because he may know stuff more than I don't. Something he knows something that I don't. This is why I'm happy. One thing, people are buying, which is great. I'm not too keen with the background checks and form 4473. Yeah, I think it's 44. Yeah, 4473 or 4773 is one of those laws, which you have to fill out those forms. From the 1968 Gun Control Act, which is totally unconstitutional in my view. It's considered registration. So that's one thing I don't like. It doesn't work. But it's just one of those things, my friends. You gotta. It's always Think before you speak, you know? And buy them, educate, use it. Like I always said before, farm safety is everyone's responsibility, and you should learn it too. Like everything else. Never too old to learn. And go, hey, and go shooting with some friends, yeah? I have one friend of mine, she wants to go shooting with me, which is cool. Yeah, it'd be a great date. Go to the gun range, right? But yeah, one thing I'm happy about that because a tide is turning when it comes to common sense, and people are learning the government can't protect people at all times, including the police. So that's gonna be talking about that enough. All right. Finally, well, a good man, a good colleague, a good man I know, a comrade, a friend, a brother, and had some little issues. So he wrote a poem. I think it's important that everyone else could learn about it too. It says here it's entitled by Al Suarez. He wrote books. He's an activist. He did a book on a stroke and occupier. It's more like a diary related format, and it's good. I have to give it to him. The stuff when people try to give you slander and rhetoric and saying you're a wicked person or to use you as a fall guy. But I'm gonna stop and I'm just gonna read here. It says the exiled prince rushed in the dead of night was quite afraid, but into the delight of his enemies, with friends like those who needs enemies. Will these guys be my demise? The prince thought. He was distraught and caught in scandals, left with his scandals, camping out as he drank his stout, to forget his situation. As a nation of people left him behind, he grinds his teeth into the street. He will never be a beggar. He will live in dignity, make treaties with others. Thinking of mother, the prince feels betrayed as he lays down in his tent. No rent, so he is free, but is confused. Feels used, but not abused. He has a sense that he will not need any sense. He will never repent, nor he will trust the serpents that entered into his space. Gone without a trace. He is incognito. A man named Tito descends into his camp. He is a tramp, homeless but not godless. He looks noble as he wears his robe in a certain way. Is he a spy or is he gay? The prince prays and waits as he plans, as Machiavelli, Machiavelli should be, should he be cunning like the fox or strong like the lion? It is he balance. Keep trying. He has talent, but the prince knows his talent is fruitless unless he applies it, does not deny it. Him and Al and I talked about this in the past. We actually met at a Recall Scott rally in downtown Fort Lauderdale. He saw my anti-UN flag, but he came up, shook my hand, introduced himself. Then we became Facebook buddies. It was an interesting time because I was talking about the Federal Reserve. I was handing out Ben Bernanke flyers, one for kind of the coins of the land. Because what happened was everyone talking about the recall Scott. It was unconstitutional under our Florida Constitution. It was illegal under our Florida Constitution. So I talked about the Federal Reserve and so forth. And one of the guys, he had that nasally voice, goes, "You're not one of us. You're not for the working person. You're a libertarian. Now go home." And all the union brothers and him look at this guy and like, "What's your problem?" So instead of getting angry at him, I used love and finesse by saying, "Well, to be very, very honest, I'm a freedom lover and a sovereign thinker." He took his sign and pounced like a little kid. So Al and I, we talked on a few things. He called himself a socialist anarchist. However, we may have some differences, but we have a lot in common than that, than before. We opened up. He needed a place to stay. I let him stay at my place for a few days. Get death in the family. Father was in Spain, getting kicked out the place he was at. So I brought him in. And he never forgotten it. Never forgotten that. So we've been friends since then. And I love him. He's like one of my brothers, brother of arms. We have our debate, but it's very honorable. No malice, no hatred, but all in good faith. What he addressed here, in my view, with this poem, always expect infiltrators, plants, COINTELPRO in these movements. Very deceiving folks out there want to take our opportunities, want to take advantage of people for their own personal gain. Like he's like myself and him, we're activists in our own ways. We go out to rallies once in a while. I go out with my podcast talking to people. I do this podcast. We're not doing this for fame. We're doing it on principle. But one thing I said we have in common, we give a damn about our communities. We want social justice across the board. We want people to be free-thinking individuals. Maybe from different avenues, which is okay. But we do care about our family and each other. He's been, he had, like, if you read Struggling Occupies, that's an example of how rough he went through and how they tried to betray him, try to use him as a scapegoat, say he's unfit, they call him a nut job. Don't worry, I can relate to that. People thought I was crazy too. I was a constitutional officer of the union once myself. I don't regret it. I'm still a union guy. They try to scapegoat me, but I'm not going much into details. But it backfired. Been vindicated. I laugh at these people. That's when I see folks out there trying to glam out, trying to dress in these little Halloween costumes, thinking who they are, and hear their rhetoric. I just start laughing at them or call them out without getting angry. They avoid me like a plague. They know I see right through them. This is why, my friends, when you go to these rallies and so forth, always observe responsibly. Be your own person. Have a common interest, share it with one another. And never do it for fame or for fortune or being an opportunist. Do it for the right cause. And this is why, like myself, I have no shame in things I do. And I'm not a rich guy. But you know what? I'm working class. I don't have a family yet. I don't really have a relationship at this time, but things are possibly falling into place. I will say that. No high expectations. Interesting people I've met, and I'll just leave it as that. And you just gotta, always stick to your guns. Never give up. Never give up. Never surrender. Doesn't matter what your faith is, or what you look like, or what your background is. We can all be empowered by one another. And one more thing. Never change others that you love and care for, but bettering themselves. And that's all I have to say for this episode. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to the show. Plus, feel free to download and circulate this throughout your social media network. If you have any questions, comments, compliments, criticisms, love letters, hate letters, etc., or send me some information that I can find interesting or haven't talked about yet. However, please use those correspondences with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, World Truth, YouTube, and Scene.life. Or you can email me at LokiLuck3, which is all together with the number 3, at gmail.com. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.